Welcome to the Future of Us Bookcast, your gateway to insights shaping our future.
Today, we're embarking on an essential discussion about a book that doesn't just describe our reality. It really names the monster under the digital bed, so to speak.
Yeah, a really foundational text for understanding the current moment. We're talking about the Age of Surveillance Capitalism, the fight for a human future at the new frontier of power.
And it's by Shoshana Zuboff, an incredible piece of work.
It really is. What strikes me is her background. She's not just a tech commentator, she's a social scientist, right? Bringing together theory, history, philosophy, and, well, deep qualitative research.
Exactly, but she writes with the power of an essayist. It's rigorous, but also deeply felt.
You can feel the urgency. She talks about tracing the scars of this new economic order onto the flesh of our daily lives. That's powerful imagery.
It is, and she's aiming big. She wants to define this whole era, what she calls the information civilization. It's not just about gadgets, it's about the fundamental structure of our society now.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty of how it works, we really need to grapple with her core definition. What is surveillance capitalism, according to Zuboff? Because it's not just big tech.
No, not at all. And she gives several definitions, which is interesting in itself. It's complex. First, she says it's a new economic order.
An economic order, okay.
Yeah, one that claims human experience as, and this is key, free raw material. For what? For hidden commercial practices. Extraction, prediction, and sales. That's the supply chain.
Human experience as free raw material. That just lands differently than thinking about data.
It does. Then she calls it a parasitic economic logic. Think about that. In normal capitalism, you make stuff or offer services.
Right, you make a better mousetrap, people buy it.
Exactly. But here, she says, the production of goods and services is actually subordinated to behavioral modification. The app, the search engine, it's bait. The real goal is modifying you.
The service isn't the product. We are, or rather our predicted behavior is.
Pretty much. And then she labels it a rogue mutation of capitalism, marked by these just unprecedented concentrations of wealth, knowledge, and power, off the charts, historically speaking.
And she draws a really stark parallel, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Comparing its threat to human nature.
Right. To the threat industrial capitalism posed to the natural world back in the 19th and 20th centuries. That really puts it into perspective. It suggests this system fundamentally consumes something essential about us.
Wow. Okay. And there are a couple more definitions that touch on power and control.
Yes. She calls it a movement aiming to impose a collective order based on total certainty. Guaranteed outcomes. That's what they sell certainty about us.
Total certainty. That sounds unsettling.
It is. And it leads to her final, most provocative definition. She says it's an overthrow of the people's sovereignty, not like a military coup, but a coup from above, an assertion of power outside of democratic consent.
A coup from above. Okay. So, framing it this way moves it from a tech issue or a privacy debate into something much bigger. Economics, power, democracy itself.
Absolutely, and that framing is crucial for understanding everything else she describes.
So, if this is a new economic order, a form of power, where does its advantage come from? You mentioned knowledge earlier.
Yes, the absolute core of it is what Zuboff calls the asymmetry of knowledge. It's simple, but profound. They know everything about us.
Everything we do online and increasingly offline.
Right, but their operations, how they use that knowledge, how they build predictive models, how they make decisions, that's all designed to be completely unknowable to us. It's a one-way mirror.
So they accumulate knowledge from us, but it's explicitly not for us.
Exactly. It's knowledge used to predict and shape our behavior primarily for the benefit of their actual customers, the advertisers or other entities who want to influence us.
And this isn't just a side effect, is it? This knowledge asymmetry is the source of the value.
It's the fundamental source of wealth in this new order. Forget owning factories. Owning the means of behavioral prediction and modification is the key. Selling certainty about the future, our future, that's the commodity.
So how did this start? It wasn't always like this, right?
Yeah.
The book traces the origin story very carefully.
Meticulously. It goes back to Google. In the early 2000s, right after the dot-com bubble burst, there was incredible pressure.
I remember that time. Lots of internet companies just vanished.
They did. And Google was under intense pressure from its venture capitalists. Zuboff quotes them, screaming bloody murder. Google was facing the real possibility of becoming, as she puts it, a crushed radish. They needed money. badly.
So desperation becomes the mother of invention in this case.
Pretty much. Google was already collecting data, like click-through rates on search results, but initially that was just to make the search engine better. If you clicked on result number 3, maybe it should be higher next time.
That sounds like a normal feedback loop,
Yeah.
improving the service for the user.
Right, a classic reinvestment cycle. The data served the user experience, but the breakthrough, the pivot, was the decision to collect more data than they actually needed for just improving search.
More data, like what kind of data?
Details about the queries, the time, location, how long you hovered, what else you searched for, stuff that wasn't strictly necessary to rank the results better. And crucially, they decided to keep it. And this extra data, this leftover stuff, that became what Zuboff famously termed behavioral surplus.
Surplus, like excess material from a factory.
Exactly. But this raw material was unique. It cost them nothing to acquire. We just gave it away by using their service. And it was exclusive to them.
And instead of just throwing it away or using it only for minor tweaks,
they diverted it away from service improvement and towards building a completely new kind of marketplace. A marketplace based on predicting user behavior, initially for targeted advertising.
there's a quote about this, isn't there? It seems really central.
Yes, it captures the essence. That surplus, a behavioral surplus, was the game-changing zero-cost asset that was diverted from service improvement toward a genuine and highly lucrative market exchange.
Game-changing zero-cost asset. That really reframes things. The search engine wasn't just a tool anymore.
Its primary economic function shifted. It became a mechanism for attracting users to supply this free raw material. We, the users, became the unpaid labor force for an invisible factory.
And for this to work, it had to be, well, hidden. People wouldn't have liked knowing their every click was being mined for profit beyond improving search.
Precisely, and this is where language becomes incredibly important. Camouflage.
What kind of language?
Think about terms like digital exhaust or digital breadcrumbs. What does that suggest to you?
Exhaust. Breadcrumbs. Like useless leftovers. Waste products. Stuff you wouldn't mind someone cleaning up.
Exactly. It implies it's worthless byproduct. So if Google is just recycling this exhaust, how could that possibly be exploitation or expropriation or, a plunder?
It sounds harmless. Innovative even. Resourceful.
It's brilliant rhetoric. It normalizes the extraction by making it seem like they're just tidying up the digital commons.
So Google figures this out, proves the model works, and then what? Does it stay contained?
Oh, absolutely not. Like any incredibly profitable innovation, it spread fast. The book points particularly to Facebook.
Right. Facebook had even more personal data.
Immensely more. And the book talks about Sheryl Sandberg arriving from Google and recognizing the potential immediately. Zuboff uses this striking phrase, calling her the typhoid Mary of surveillance capitalism.
Typhoid Mary. That's quite a label. Why?
Because she allegedly recognized how Facebook's social graph, that intricate map of who knows who, what they like, where they are, their connections, was an awe-inspiring source of behavioral surplus, even richer than search data.
It's like finding an even bigger, deeper mine.
Exactly. The book compares it to discovering the world's largest diamond and deepest gold mine combined. And Sandberg reportedly highlighted its quality. We have better information than anyone else. We know gender, age, location, and it's real data as opposed to the stuff other people infer.
Real data, not just inferences. That must have been incredibly valuable to advertisers.
Beyond valuable. It allowed Facebook not just to meet existing demand for ads, but to actually create demand by weaving tailored messages right into the social fabric, influencing interactions in unprecedented ways. The model wasn't just copied, it was amplified.
Okay, so they've discovered this incredibly valuable behavioral surplus. It's zero cost. It's exclusive. What happens next? You'd want to protect that, right?
Absolutely. And that's what Chapter 4, The Moat Around the Castle, is all about. How do they defend this new territory and the flow of this free raw material?
Building a moat suggests defensiveness, keeping people out.
It is. And the first consequence for us, the users, is what Zuboff terms digital dispossession. We are essentially kicked off our own land, metaphorically speaking. Our own behavior becomes territory claimed by others.
Exiled from our own behavior. That phrase you used earlier, how does that manifest?
Well, think about Larry Page's stated ambition, which the book cites. Everything you've ever heard or seen or experienced will become searchable. Your whole life will be searchable.
Everything, that's total.
It implies a total claim. By aiming to capture the entirety of human experience, the argument goes we get redefined. We're no longer just individuals living our lives, we become human natural resources for their extraction processes. Our own tacit claims to own our experience, to decide what is shared, just evaporates.
Like indigenous people having their land declared terra nullius as empty land ready for claiming.
That's a very apt parallel, and Zuboff draws another powerful historical parallel here. The Gilded Age robber barons.
The Rockefellers, the Carnegies.
Exactly. She argues they operated similarly. They carved out a lawless space for their industrial empires, often using brutal tactics. And crucially, they fought hard to keep democracy and regulation away from their new concentrations of wealth and power.
How do they justify that?
They used ideologies like social Darwinism, this twisted idea of survival of the fittest applied to society to claim their success wasn't greed, but the natural, inevitable outcome of progress. Johnny Rockefeller literally said his fortune was the result of the natural law of trade development.
Ah, so it wasn't their fault they were so rich and powerful. It was just nature taking its course.
Precisely. And Zuboff argues today's surveillance capitalists use the same playbook. They explain their dominance not as a result of aggressive strategy or market manipulation, but as the inevitable consequence of network effects or algorithms or platform dynamics.
It's just technology evolving, right? Nothing to see here. Move along.
Exactly. It deflects responsibility and scrutiny, and they actively fortify this lawless space.
How? What does the moat actually consist of?
It's a multi-pronged strategy, according to the book. Intense lobbying, pouring money into shaping legislation and public opinion, cultivating political alliances, and, very significantly, the revolving door.
Where people move between top jobs in the industry, like at Google, and high-level positions in government.
Yes. The book specifically mentions the flow of personnel during the Obama administration as an example of how these boundaries blurred, potentially creating sympathetic ears within regulatory bodies and government. It's about managing the political environment to ensure the behavioral surplus keeps flowing freely and without regulation.
Okay, so they build defenses. But what happens when people do notice? When there's public outcry or regulatory pressure? This leads into Chapter 5, right?
Yes, Chapter 5, the elaboration of surveillance capitalism. Kidnap, corner, compete. This chapter lays out the tactical playbook for dealing with resistance, what Zuboff calls the dispossession cycle.
A cycle, suggesting it repeats.
Over and over. It's a four-stage process designed to basically wear down opposition and normalize the controversial practices.
Okay, what's stage 1?
Incursion. This is the initial, often audacious move into new territory. Think of Google launching Gmail and people realizing it was scanning their private emails for ad targeting.
I remember the shock around that. Or the Google Street View cars.
Exactly. The Street View example is perfect. When it emerged, they weren't just taking photos, but also collecting data packets from private, unsecured Wi-Fi networks as they drove by. That was a major incursion, sparking global outrage and legal challenges. That's the sharp initial pain.
Okay, so the incursion happens, people react. What's stage 2?
Habituation. The goal here is to just keep the practice going, maybe make some soothing noises, deny the seriousness until people get used to it, until it becomes part of the furniture.
Like the frog in slowly boiling water.
Sort of. Facebook's like button is presented as a masterclass in habituation. Initially controversial tracking users across the web, Facebook deflected, delayed, and eventually made the button so ubiquitous, so essential for online interaction, that removing it became unthinkable.
It became, as the book says, an indispensable prosthetic of virtual communication. We couldn't imagine the web without it, even though it's a primary extraction tool.
Precisely. They buy time, often years, for the controversy to fade and the behavior to become normalized.
Stage 3.
Adaptation. This is where they make some concessions, often superficial ones, to quiet down regulators or the public. Maybe they tweak privacy settings, issue apologies, agree to settlements.
Like Facebook's 2011 settlement with the FTC over privacy deception.
Exactly. The book argues that regulators often think they're disciplining a company, but they're actually dealing with the fundamental economic logic of surveillance capitalism, which inherently conflicts with privacy. So the adaptations are often cosmetic, not structural.
They address the symptom, not the cause.
Right, which leads directly to stage 4, redirection. After the adaptation phase buys them breathing room, they regroup and find new ways to achieve the same extraction goals, often more subtly or in a different domain.
So they seem to comply, But the core operation continues, just maybe underground or shifted sideways.
Exactly. It's why fighting these battles often feels like whack-a-mole. You address one issue and the extraction pops up somewhere else. This is where Zuboff uses that quote about resistance being fleeting.
The Novocaine quote.
Yes. Opposition is fleeting, like the sharp yelp of pain when a Novocaine needle first pierces the flesh before numbness sets in. The cycle is designed to produce that numbness, that acceptance.
Let's go back to the Google Street View example to see the full cycle. Incursion was the Wi-Fi data collection.
Yeah.
What was the redirection? Did they stop mapping?
Not at all. The redirection was brilliant in a way. After the Apologies and Settlements adaptation, they didn't just shut down mapping. Instead, they developed new technologies like indoor positioning systems and the cartographer backpack.
Cartographer backpack?
What was that? A wearable system designed to map the interiors of buildings, airports, shopping malls, museums, potentially even offices.
So they moved the mapping from public streets where there was outcry to semi-public and private indoor spaces.
Precisely. This massively expanded their ability to track people's movements seamlessly between the outdoor world and indoor environments. The behavioral surplus extraction continued, arguably even more powerfully, just shifted to a less visible, less regulated domain. Full throttle, as the book says.
So the cycle worked. Outrage faded, the core capability was preserved and even enhanced. That's quite a strategy.
So we've seen how the surplus is discovered and defended. Now we need to look at how this knowledge is actually managed and expanded. Chapter 6 is crucial here. Hijacked. The division of learning in society.
Hijacked. Strong word. What's being hijacked?
Our collective learning, essentially. The chapter starts by introducing the concept of the electronic text.
Okay, what is that?
Think about it. Almost everything we do now leaves a digital trace, right? Every search, click, purchase, location ping, message, interaction with a smart device, it's all recorded and codified.
It creates a massive ongoing record of our lives.
Exactly. That ever-expanding record is the electronic text. And Zuboff argues it's spreading silently but relentlessly, like a colossal oil slick moving far beyond our computers and phones into every aspect of life.
An oil slick covering everything.
Okay. And the crucial point is, who gets to write, own, and interpret this text? Surveillance Capital does. They become the primary composers and owners of this fundamental record of modern society.
Which creates that asymmetry of knowledge we talked about earlier, but on a societal scale.
Precisely. It leads to what she calls an unprecedented and abnormal division of learning in society. Those who own and analyze the electronic text gain immense power to understand, predict, and ultimately shape social outcomes, while the rest of us, well, we don't even get to read most of it.
How does she illustrate this hidden knowledge?
Through a really useful analogy, the two texts. There's the first text. That's the stuff you see and interact with the website, the app interface, the posts, the search results.
The user-facing layer.
Right. But then there's the shadow text. This is the hidden layer built from the behavioral surplus. It contains the real value, the analyses, the correlations, the predictions about our behavior.
Where does the shadow text live?
The book gives the example of Facebook's Hive. This was apparently a massive log storage system kept completely separate from the user interface, where they stored all the detailed tracking and ad targeting data. That's the shadow text.
And we, the public, the subjects of the text, have no right to see it.
None whatsoever. It's proprietary. It's their competitive advantage. The first text is the stage performance. The shadow text is the backstage machinery controlling the show. It dictates what you see, what you're offered, how you're nudged. It's the source of their control over the division of learning.
That hidden layer of knowledge derived from us, but not shared with us.
Okay. And this relentless drive for more knowledge, more predictive power, leads us into Chapter 8, rendition, from experience to data.
Rendition. That word has connotations, like rendering fat, or rendering someone to another country.
It does, and Zuboff uses it deliberately. She defines rendition as the systematic, often forceful, translation of human experience into data flows. It's the process of making our lives machine-readable, quantifiable. She calls it the original sin upon which the entire enterprise rests.
So it's the actual process of turning life into data points.
Yes. And what drives this process relentlessly deeper into our lives, the need for economies of scope.
Scope, not just scale. What's the difference?
Scale is about getting more data, vast quantities. Google needed billions of searches. Scope is about getting varied data, different kinds of data. To make really accurate predictions about complex human behavior, you can't just rely on clicks and searches.
You need more intimate details.
You need everything. Your tone of voice, your heart rate, your driving habits, who you talk to, what you say, how you sleep, where you walk. Variety is key for prediction. This imperative for scope is what forces surveillance capitalism out of the screen and into the real world.
Into our homes, our cars, our bodies.
Yes. The book puts it starkly. The system's expansionist logic wants your bloodstream, your bed, your breakfast conversation, your commute, your refrigerator, your living room. Every corner must be rendered into data.
That sounds like total surveillance, but driven by economics, not just politics.
Precisely. The examples of smart home devices are particularly chilling here. The book dissects the privacy policy of a product like the Sleep Number smart bed.
What does a smart bed collect? Aside from presumably how much you toss and turn?
Oh, much more. According to the policy cited, it collects detailed biometric data, movement, respiration patterns, heart rate, and incredibly audio signals from the bedroom.
The audio signals. It's listening.
The policy allows for it. And here's the kicker. The policy reserves the company's right to share or exploit all this collected data.
Let me guess. Even after you stop using the bed.
Exactly. Even after you deactivate or cancel the services, your most intimate biometric data, the sounds from your bedroom, become a permanent asset they can potentially monetize forever.
That feels like a fundamental violation of sanctuary, of privacy.
It is. And Zuboff argues this rendition process is often not truly voluntary. She calls it involuntary rendition.
How can it be involuntary if you buy the device?
Well, often people agree out of ignorance. They don't read or understand the dense privacy policies. Or, more fundamentally, they face what she calls the dictatorship of no alternatives.
Meaning?
Meaning, if you want to participate in modern life, you often have to submit to rendition, need car insurance. Increasingly, it involves a tracking device, want a job, might require invasive monitoring software, need social connection, you use the dominant platforms. Accessing basic services often means surrendering your experience to datafication.
So consent becomes meaningless when there's no real choice.
Nor when the choice is between participation and exclusion. Involuntary rendition, driven by the need for scope, becomes, as the book says, an inescapable fact of digital life.
Okay, so experience is rendered into data, creating this shadow text, this immense knowledge. But what's the ultimate goal? Just knowing isn't enough, is it?
No. The goal shifts. It evolves from just knowing behavior to actively shaping behavior. This is the prediction imperative taking its final form. It's not just about automating information flows about you anymore.
It's about automating you.
Precisely. Guaranteeing outcomes for their customers. And this drive necessitates a new form of power, one that Zuboff argues is distinct from historical forms like totalitarianism.
Right. She warns against just seeing this as Orwell's Big Brother 2.0. What does she call this new power?
Instrumentarian power. She emphasizes that comparing it directly to totalitarianism is a mistake. She calls it horseless carriage syndrome, trying to understand the new by using only old categories.
So how is instrumentarian power different from, say, 20th century totalitarianism?
The goals and methods differ. Totalitarianism, think Stalin or Mao, aimed for total domination of the human soul. It demanded ideological conformity, used terror, propaganda, erased history, controlled thought. It wanted to possess you, inside and out.
Okay, complete control of the person.
Instrumentarianism, on the other hand, is more indifferent to your soul or your beliefs. Its primary goal, emerging from the market, is total certainty, guaranteed outcomes. It achieves this through the ubiquitous network digital infrastructure, which she calls Big Other.
Big Other instead of Big Brother.
Yes. Big Other doesn't necessarily need terror or ideology. It works by tuning, herding, and conditioning behavior remotely, often without conscious awareness, using data and feedback loops. It wants to control what you do, not necessarily what you think or feel.
So it's more about behavioral engineering than mind control.
Exactly. The book puts it this way. Instrumentarianism effectively exiles us from our own behavior. It severs our insides from our outsides, our subjectivity and interiority from our observable actions.
It bypasses our inner life to directly manipulate our actions. Where does this idea come from?
Zuboff traces its intellectual lineage back to B.F. Skinner and his radical behaviorism. Skinner believed behavior could be engineered through carefully designed schedules of reinforcement, rewards, and punishments.
Like training pigeons in a lab.
Yes. But now, Big Other allows these Skinnerian principles to be applied remotely, continuously, and at planetary scale, turning society itself into a giant Skinner box.
Is there a moment when this shift from knowing to shaping became explicit?
The book points to Facebook's infamous a 61 million person experiment in social influence during the 2010 U.S. elections as a watershed moment.
What did they do?
They experimentally manipulated the messages shown in users' news feeds. Some saw an I voted button with pictures of friends who had voted. Others saw just an informational message, and a control group saw nothing election-related.
Then what happened?
They found that the social pressure message significantly increased voter turnout among those who saw it. They demonstrated they could measurably influence real-world, high-stakes behavior like voting on a massive scale.
That feels like crossing a line. From observing to intervening.
It was a declaration of authority, Zuboff argues, a claim to have the right and the means to shape the future course of human behavior. The locus of control shifts. It's no longer just the individual saying, I will do this, but the system nudging and predicting, you will do this.
And this behavioral tuning isn't confined to screens, is it? You mentioned Pokemon Go earlier.
Right. Pokemon Go is presented as a key prototype for extending instrumentarian power into the physical world. It wasn't just a game. It was an experiment in real-world behavioral modification.
How so?
By placing virtual rewards, the Pokemon, at specific real-world locations, the game could literally herd millions of people to specific places at specific times. Businesses could pay to have lures placed at their shops to drive foot traffic. It demonstrated the power to remotely tune real-world behavior for commercial ends, creating a kind of digitally orchestrated hive mentality.
I remember those stories of crowds suddenly appearing in parks or random street corners.
Yes, and the book recounts anecdotes like people demanding access to private property to catch a rare Pokemon, the virtual incentive overriding social norms and physical boundaries. It showed the seamless integration of digital command and physical action.
So this brings us to the final part of the argument, Chapter 11, the right to the future tense. What's fundamentally at stake here?
What's at stake is our very ability to project ourselves into the future on our own terms. Our will. Zuboff calls our will the mental organ of our future, the capacity that allows us to form projects, to imagine and strive for goals based on our own intentions.
Our ability to say, I will, and mean it.
Exactly. But surveillance capitalism, seeking guaranteed outcomes, bypasses this unpredictable human will through what she calls the uncontract.
The uncontract, what's that? Sounds ominous.
It's not a contract in the traditional sense. No mutual agreement, dialogue, promises, or trust involved. It's a unilateral execution of power. The system doesn't negotiate with you. It uses its predictive knowledge and behavioral modification tools to simply ensure a desired outcome. It aims for contract utopia, perfect information, guaranteed performance by automating you, not by collaborating with you.
It removes the uncertainty, the friction, the humanity from interaction.
That's the argument. It bypasses the messiness of human freedom and replaces it with automated certainty.
And if the system needs total certainty, it needs total visibility. Does any space remain private?
This leads to one of the most profound losses, the erosion of sanctuary. That ancient idea of an inviolable space, a refuge where you are safe from external power, where you can just be. The Greek word was asylon, literally unplunderable.
A space that cannot be taken from.
Right. But with Big Other, Zuboff argues, the walls dissolve. Your smart home, filled with listening devices, cameras, sensors. It ceases to be a private refuge. It becomes just another set of coordinates for extraction and actuation. The place for solitude, for cultivating an inner life away from observation, simply vanishes.
No place left to hide, not even inside your own home.
That's the trajectory. Which brings us back to that stark warning echoing the economic historian Karl Polanyi.
The comparison between industrial and surveillance capitalism.
Yes, it's worth hearing again. If industrial civilization flourished at the expense of nature and now threatens to cost us the earth, an information civilization shaped by surveillance capitalism will thrive at the expense of human nature and threatens to cost us our humanity.
Cost us our humanity. That is the ultimate stake she identifies. It's a fight for the future of what it means to be human.
It really is a fight against the automation of the self. #tag outro.
Well, that's a lot to take in. This exploration of the age of surveillance capitalism really does force you to see the digital world and the companies dominating it in a completely new light. not just convenient tools, but architects of a powerful and perhaps dangerous new economic order.
It's a challenging read, but essential, I think. Let's try to quickly recap the core arguments Zuboff makes.
Okay. First, surveillance capitalism isn't just about tech. It's a new economic logic. It relies on extracting behavioral surplus data beyond what's needed for service improvement as a free raw material.
Right. And the surplus is then used in hidden markets to predict and increasingly shape our behavior for profit. It's parasitic. The service is often just the host.
Second, this whole system is built on and defended by massive asymmetries of knowledge. They know us. We don't know them or how they operate. And they use tactics like the dispossession cycle incursion, habituation, adaptation, redirection to overcome resistance and normalize extraction.
Third, the system has an insatiable need to grow, driven by the prediction imperative. This requires economies of scope, pushing rendition, turning experience into data into every corner of our lives, offline as well as online, often involuntarily. The reality business.
And finally, this culminates in a new form of power, instrumentarian power or big other. Unlike totalitarianism, it seeks total certainty and guaranteed outcomes by tuning and herding behavior remotely, threatening individual autonomy and our fundamental right to the future tense.
That captures the main threads, I think. So if people take away just a few key points from our discussion today, what should they be?
Okay, bullet points. First, the core economic engine here is monetizing data that is specifically diverted away from improving the user's service. That diversion is the key.
Second takeaway. These companies operate largely in secret, controlling society's learning through the shadow text. The analyses and predictions derive from our data that we never get to see or contest.
Third, don't be fooled by the idea that technology is neutral. The book argues convincingly that powerful economic imperatives are the real puppet masters driving the deployment of these technologies.
And lastly, perhaps most importantly, fighting back requires more than just individual action like tweaking privacy settings. It requires collective awareness and political action to assert fundamental rights like the right to sanctuary, private space, and the right to the future tense autonomy. We need to challenge the system's legitimacy.
A challenge to reclaim our experience in our future. Powerful stuff.
Indeed.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Us Bookcast. We hope you found inspiration in these ideas. Don't forget to subscribe and share. Together, we're co-creating the world of tomorrow.